I don't think that men need to not cry. I just don't think you need to cry at every single thing that bothers you. I don't think you need to cry because someone called you a name. This is when men often cry.
My club's for closers.
I want to kind of warn people before, usually these closing segments are I guess, uplifting or helpful. It was branded by some fans, Crowder Closes, and so now we use that on YouTube. Thank you for the idea. But I want to warn anyone there who is having a good time. I don't want to ruin your day. This one is a little bit sad, hopefully helpful. So, if you need to grab some time or come back to this later, 3, 2, there you go, spoiler alert. I know I talked about this on social media this week, that Hopper, of course, who you know, and Hopper, he's been on the show quite a bit, was diagnosed with cancer, lymphoma cancer. So it's been a very hard week for us. It is, listen, here's the thing. I've gone back and forth whether I should even talk about this, because we don't know. He could live a longer time. He has a 10-year-old dog, and he may not. Depends on how he responds to treatment, depends on how aggressive it is. And it was a real roller coaster ride because we got this on Friday, this news. And then we went to the oncologist and they said, hey, we actually don't think that's what it is. And so we felt so good, like a weight was lifted. And then we found out yesterday that is what it was. And they said maybe it's not the fast-moving cancer, and it is the fast-moving lymphoma cancer. And I know people, it's always a cop-out where people try to talk about it, and I just want to talk about things so people don't feel alone. But I do know with millions of listeners out there, people are tuning in. There are probably people going through a similar situation. I want to be clear about something here. I know that a man for whom the hardest thing they've ever experienced is their dog with cancer has lived a charmed life. It's not lost on me, okay? I want to make sure that I understand that. I'm not equivocating losing a dog. And by the way, he may not. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how long he's going to be here. But I did feel that since he's been an active part of the show, that I owed it to you to talk about this now. And when it does happen, when he's not with us anymore, we're not going to do another closing segment on this. I wanted to talk about this now so that you didn't feel lied to. Because I know that Hopper out there has 20, 30,000 followers on Twitter. We don't even know who runs that account. And by the way, whoever runs the Hopper accounts out there, obviously, when the final chapter is written, I'd appreciate if you just kind of close it down, because I don't want to have to look at that. So I understand that someone who's been through something like this saying it's the hardest thing that they've been through. They've lived a very charmed life. This has absolutely been the hardest thing that I've ever experienced. And I try to be honest as I can with you. These last 2 years have been some of the hardest of my life. And this is the hardest thing I've been through. I've lost relatives. I've lost friends. I've had friends who were taken too young. I know this doesn't compare to losing children. My dad had melanoma, and I know it doesn't mean that I don't love my father more. It doesn't mean that I understand the value of human life is greater than a dog. That's not it. But Hopper is, outside of my wife, the living being on this earth that I gave more of myself to than any other person on this planet. My best friend is dying. And there's no more honest way to express it. I don't know. I know this is the kind of, you know what? It, I don't care. Someone will take that and turn it into a meme. Oh, pussy, you know what? I'll walk away from this before I ever actually have to feel ashamed of the fact that I'm emotional over losing a good friend. And I know it'll be used against me. I know that'll turn into a meme. Whatever. And I've talked about this. I don't think that men need to not cry. I just don't think you need to cry at every single thing that bothers you. I don't think you need to cry because someone called you a name. This is when men often cry. Let me kind of give you some information on Hopper, because you see him, but you don't really know the whole story. I prayed for Hopper. I really did, my whole life. And he's really been a gift in my life and in my family's life, and he's been the best gift. And I poured so much of myself. I never had a dog growing up, and I wanted one. I begged, I pleaded for one. I had all the dog books. I watched the dog shows on TV. I knew every breed. I knew all of the training methods, but I couldn't have one because I was raised in an apartment. And by the way, this is going to come back to something that's hopefully helpful for people out there. So you don't just need to shut it off because it's sad. There's a purpose to this. And I learned a lot this week. It's not that cheesy. This dog taught me more about, it's almost like this dog was rescuing me. It's not that. But I did learn a lot this week. Couldn't have a dog when I grew up because I was raised in an apartment. Little 3-bedroom on Reed Street in the South Shore of Montreal. You can run a search on that right now and see the silver spoon with which I was raised. Once I'd been married for a couple of years, I decided that I was going to fulfill a dream. And see, at this point in time, I should clarify, I had parted ways with Fox News. I'd sold some script rights. I was getting burnt out with stand-up. I was in Western Michigan, kind of floundering. I was depressed. I'm going to grab some water here real quick. So those who are listening terrestrially, sorry. It's just, my mouth is drier than usual. Keep it real, man. People say they're not actually keeping it real. They'd be crying if they were. I was depressed. And I've talked about this before. My wife didn't fully know how depressed I was because I'd be up before her in the morning and I'd be off to the gym before she left for work. And after the gym, I didn't know where I was headed. In my life, I didn't know where I was headed. I just knew that I had to keep moving. But I decided that it was the right time to fulfill a lifelong dream. I wanted my whole life. I wanted to have a dog. Again, I know it sounds silly, but when you're a kid and all you want is a dog and you cannot have a dog, it's a big deal. So around Christmas time, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I started looking on Pet Finder. And I actually became a volunteer at a local non-kill shelter, which required a certain level of training to even begin with. I had the books, I watched the training videos, and I was going to be the best dog owner ever. Hopper popped up on Pet Finder, and I remember the lady bringing him to our house, and he was so nuts that first time I met him with energy because he'd been in a crate for so long. And by the way, I want to make sure no one thinks that she was not abusing the dog. She ran a rescue with her best friend, and she lost her best friend to cancer. It's been a lot. This has been a crappy 2019. One of my wife's best friends just got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and obviously now it's been a rough few months, but I'm still grateful. It's a day above ground, and there are people who have it a whole lot worse. So people out there who have it worse, don't think that I'm comparing my plight to yours. There's a lady who ran the shelter anyway. That's what I was talking about. She had a friend who ran it with her, and not a shelter, a rescue. So they ran it out of their house, but her friend died of cancer, and so she was overwhelmed. And she had to crate a lot of the dogs because not all dogs get along. And Hopper had always been a people dog. He's a super easy dog. I mean, you know this.
Oh, yeah.
As long as he's around his people. The reason he's not in here now, by the way, no, he's not dead. People who are like, where's Hopper? It's just because there are other people around right now. He'd rather be in the room where the most amount of people are. But he doesn't do well in a crate. So he came in the house and he was buzzing around like crazy. But he immediately rolled over, put his paw on me, and licked my face. But my wife and I remember we decided that we weren't just going to take the dog on our first meeting. We were going to talk about it. We were going to be disciplined, which I remember the rescue lady seemed really surprised. And I felt bad because she made a decent trip out to us. It was a little ways. She shouldn't have been so surprised. At that point, she was effectively bringing a fat, 3-legged, balding, alopecia dog with Lyme disease. She was like, we'll take it. But he wasn't always the Hopper that you see today. But I told her we'd give her an answer the following day. Like I said, this is hopefully going to tie back in. This is me taking time for me here. But we really had already decided. The next day we drove out, we meet her. We meet this lady between our place and her place. Took him in our old Explorer. Was it the Taurus? I don't know. He ripped the steering wheel off the Taurus when we took him to an outdoor shooting range. We parked a mile away, and he still heard it. He took the steering wheel off of our Taurus. I remember she told us that first night. She told us that we had to crate him. That no matter how much he wailed, no matter how much he complained, that just stick it through. You got to put him in the crate. Well, that night he howled. This dog howled. I came down the next morning to find the crate. It looked like the shark cage in Jaws after it had been torn apart by the real shark. They inserted documentary film footage in that. It was broken down. He'd thrown up. He'd pooped in there. And my wife and I were actually on our way to the Rite Aid for earplugs to prepare for the next night because, we got to stick this through. When we came back, we realized that we hadn't crated him. But he was just sleeping in his bed. Fine. So maybe he doesn't need it. So we went to church. Came back, was in his bed. Didn't so much as nibble a shoelace. We went to go see Captain America. I don't remember which one it was at that point. Came back, same. And we've never really had a problem with him ever since. We haven't had to crate him. He got into the trash every now and then. That's because my wife left a Slim Jim on the top of the trash at one point, and it was open, and so he just thought, the trash is a place I go for Slim Jims.
I do.
Why wouldn't you? If it's on the top, you just pull a Costanza. But it is funny because when I heard what the doctor said, I really could remember. It's one of those things people say your life flashes before your eyes, but when you're about to lose something really important, everything that's important about that person, that thing, floods every part of your brain. Things that I didn't even know were in there, from how I used to sleep on my the bed next to my desk in our den back when we did the show, and it was in a den. He was right next to my desk every single day. He used to ram his head if the door was closed, just boom. You'd hear him crying. And I remembered serving him sardines on the old front porch and trying to eat them myself and almost throwing up. I remember teaching him to sit, to stay. And I remember taking him to run out by the old East Grand Rapids High School track, taking him up north for the first time. And particularly, I remember that second night, after the first night with the crate, I remember him just falling asleep in my wife's arms on the futon, like he'd known her his whole life. And he's done it ever since, every single night. And I had to be on a schedule for Hopper. I had to live for something else who was completely dependent on me. And that's why I think this is so hard, because he can't tell us, that he's in pain. That's what's so hard. You have to make a decision out of wanting to avoid cruelty. And sometimes you have to make a decision that is to end the life of someone or something you care so much about. But at this point, I remember it gave me a purpose. It made me more of an adult. And Hopper made me happy. He makes me really happy. And sometimes in life, you can picture flashpoint moments that cut deeper than you've ever felt in your life. In that moment, those words are burned into your memory, etched into the walls of your soul forever. And when we found the news, I remember my wife tearing up, and she said, I just wanted to bottle everything up about Hopper that there is and just carry it. She said that she just wanted to bottle up everything there was about Hopper and just carry it with her forever. And that's exactly how I feel. And I feel terrible that there's nothing I can do to help my wife, too. That's something that's terrible. They talk about toxic masculinity. Listen, it doesn't come from having to prove myself. It comes from loving my wife, from trying to provide for my wife, from wanting to burden that pain of my wife, because we're called to do that. As men, as Christians, as believers in God, believers in Christ, it's really painful, not just losing your best friend, but knowing how much pain your wife is in. And there's nothing you can do. Some people get some great gifts in their lives, and Hopper really was the best gift. I can talk about this a little bit. Everyone always says their dog is special, and I'm sure that's true to an extent. But believe me when I say that Hopper really is special. He changed lives. And I see people like, I miss my dog, and it's just a dog that's, crapping around the house, and they have no relationship with, there's no peace in the house. No, Hopper he changed lives. I don't just mean that in the sense that, he changed our lives, or he brought love into the house. He changed people's lives. Ask anyone on the team. He's probably changed a lot of your lives. Ask anyone who's come to visit. People who don't even like dogs loved Hopper. My aunt, who was terrified of dogs, loved Hopper. Wanted to get a dog because of Hopper. Kids who were terrified of dogs loved Hopper. He didn't always love them back. That's the one thing. Hopper, with the kids who were rambunctious, whacking him, he would walk away, but if he walked away and you followed him, you'd see the growl. You saw the Hodge twins, good example, on this show, Freak, when I introduced him to Hopper. One of the funniest things I've ever seen. I about passed out in the show laughing. They were terrified. What you didn't see was the next time they came over to my house and Hopper was there, they were sitting and petting Hopper. This is even just this last time, because he was such a peaceful dog. And by the way, I shouldn't say he is. Such a calm dog and such a loving dog that he would change people's hearts and views on dogs. He had a gift, genuinely, of melting away fear. And they wanted to make him a therapy dog until we found out that he didn't like sunglasses. If you were wearing sunglasses, he might mess you up. So thank God we didn't make him a therapy dog, but that's why. And going through this, and it being the most painful thing I've experienced, I'm ashamed to say that at one point, I actually just thought when this was just happening and it was this blinding pain, the worst part was not knowing what was happening, right? That's what's sometimes worse, is the anticipation than what actually happens. Not knowing the answer, whether it was the aggressive cancer or whether it was a slow-moving cancer. At one point, I actually just thought of wanting to have Betty, our new puppy, adopted. Not because I don't love Betty, but because I thought I just can never go through this again. I thought I'll do anything to avoid this kind of pain again at all costs. And then I realized how stupid and ungrateful I was. I probably never felt more ashamed of myself in my life. That I was taking a gift that I'd prayed for my whole life, all my childhood, and I was spitting on it. Why? Because I didn't get to keep it forever? Because as much as it hurts, I've gained so much more. And I really hope that for a 3-legged dog with alopecia and Lyme disease, he would say that. I hope that I gave enough. And I realized that I felt that way before. Not just about Hopper, I felt that way with this show, where things got so hard that I wanted to throw it all away. Anything to avoid the hell that I was going through at that point ever again. But I've gained so much more. You have given me so much more. And in the same way, I can only hope that I've given enough. So the takeaway tonight, and it's a cliche, I know, but sometimes a tale as old as time is that way for a simple reason, and that's because it's true. I've talked about it before. It's nothing new, but genuinely be grateful. And something else too, I noticed sometimes you're really praying and begging for something more than you'll have gratitude for when you actually get what you ask for. Because when we were praying, please, we just don't want this to be aggressive cancer. And then they told us it probably wasn't. We said, wow, we really, really need to be thankful here. Now then, that was taken away from us because it turned out that it was. They went back and forth. Get your facts straight, vet. No, they're good vets. They couldn't know. He's a weird dog. He's tough to examine. But sometimes you pray for miracles and then don't believe that they'll happen. And I also noticed that pain doesn't, we used to say misery loves company. I don't think it's that so much as pain doesn't love to be alone. We were at the vet, and when we got that good news at the oncologist, I remember there was a lady there with her dog, Leia, who had mesothelioma and wasn't doing so well. And we told her about Hopper, and we went in, and that was at the point when they gave us better news. And we came out, and she said, yeah, what? And she seemed upset. She said, what news did you get? And we could tell she was upset, and we said, yeah, it's not good. We had just received great news. But we realized that she would feel more alone if we said, yeah, great news, and her dog was probably not going to make it with mesothelioma. Really rough. It was pretty far along. Because pain just doesn't want to be alone. And that's why I try to be as transparent as possible. By the way, sharing something for the sake of sharing it, Jordan Peterson's talk, doesn't help anybody if it's not something good. A lot of people just share sin. A lot of people share their faults and don't offer a solution. Like, well, I just don't want you to feel alone. And so they talk about mental health issues or drugs. Well, hold on, do you have a solution to it? Otherwise, you're not helping. But sharing pain, the kind of pain that everyone goes through, it really does help people, knowing that they're not alone. But if we're going to have one takeaway this week, and now I'm just sort of circling the runway, I guess, it really is simple. Be grateful. If you've got a gift, appreciate it. Share it. Because most gifts, nearly all gifts, aren't forever. And just because it's not forever, or just because at some point it may hurt, it doesn't mean that it's not a gift. And you don't have the right to throw it all away. Hey there, if you like this video, this is the part where I would usually tell you to subscribe, but I can't do it anymore. I'm going to tell you to subscribe, and then YouTube is going to decide that we can't reach you even though you subscribe to this channel, and then I'll say hit the notification bell, and then the notification bell won't even be there anymore. I don't know what to say. More than likely you'll find my face in a milk carton, but do what you can to stop it. It probably won't do much.